Hello, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to G from Enso, who are a tyre technology business that specialise in the electric vehicle market. Thank you for joining us today, G.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Please tell us about your business, what it does, and where it fits in the supply chain cycle.
Yeah, no problem. So Enso basically is a tire technology company, and we focus on making better tires for electric vehicles. And the critical reason for that is that we need electric vehicles to be successful to combat climate change. But for them to be successful, we critically, of course, have to reduce their cost of operations. And we do that in two major ways. On one hand, we save on the energy bill for operating your electric car by making your tires more energy efficient, which means that you use less kilowatts per mile and also extend the range of your vehicles, increasing the operational window. And also we save you on the tire bill by making tires that last longer, so you buy fewer of them, and we sell them to you directly, so they're more affordable as well. And the upside of doing all of this is that we reduce carbon emissions, air pollution, microplastic pollution, and several million tons of waste in the future, because we simply won't need to make as many tires.
That's really interesting. And because obviously I'm not an expert in this where you are, and I'm sure most people will be thinking something similar. What are the effects of an electric vehicle on a tyre compared to my gas-guzzling diesel? You know, what would be the difference effect on the tyres of, say, a traditional electric vehicle against my car?
Well, there's a couple of critical things about electric cars that relate to the vehicle itself. And then the second thing is how and where are they used? So let's go into the vehicle itself. Electric car is about 3 times more energy efficient in converting energy into motion. And that's great. They're about 75% energy efficient. When you count the regeneration, with the regen of capturing the momentum back into the battery, EVs are up to 90% efficient. So that means that you put, 90 pence, a pound in the electricity in the car, you get 90 pence worth of motion. So that's great. A fossil fuel car is about a third of that or less. So while an EV is at least 75% efficient, and a fossil fuel car is only 25. And that means that when you put a pound worth of fuel in the tank, you only get about 25p worth of motion. And so that difference is a critical thing that people often don't realize, is due to the high efficiency of electric vehicles, we made these brilliant beasts that are so energy efficient, which means that we don't have to use as much kilowatts or energy to propel ourselves. When you then look at the tire, it's the number one source of energy losses, particularly at city speeds. So whereby a traditional fossil fuel car, you can't really improve all those energy losses you've already suffered by putting on a better tire. For an EV, because it's already so efficient, it means that they basically get about 3 times more range, 3 times the benefit, or 3 times the downside if you downgrade your tires to a poorer quality. So in a nutshell, from an efficiency standpoint, EVs are about 3 times more sensitive to tires, either good or bad, which makes them basically tires are almost 3 times more important for EVs than non-EVs to choose the right one. And this is with the large EV fleets already out there, like delivery vehicles and Uber drivers and taxi drivers who we cater to. All of these customers see when they put a better tire, they see it directly in their revenue generation because they're saving so much of the energy bill. Where a traditional vehicle like an ICE car, they wouldn't really see this at the same level. So these are the critical things for us to take into account. The inherent efficiency of EVs means that you really have to be selective when it comes to tires. And that's just one part. So that's part number one, the high efficiency of EVs. The second part that makes the EV unique from an ICE vehicle is that it's heavy and it has high torque. So you have here a vehicle that naturally, simply due to the laws of physics, will wear tires faster than a traditional car. If you drive the same 2 vehicles, ICE and EV, identical, the EV will just wear it more because it just has more weight on the wheels. And so when we started Enso, this was something that people just didn't quite understand or were not really willing to accept. But you can see that with large EV fleets already operating today, is that they come to us always and say, look, we put on these tires and we lost all this range. And by the way, they're chewing through the tires faster than we can ever believe. And it's the only bill on the TCO calculation that is going up because they're buying more tires. So for us, the critical thing about the nature of EVs is the efficiency and the weight and torque, which is just a factor of the physics of the vehicle. But
that's superb, and for going for that, G, because most people like myself wouldn't have been aware of that, and it's really, really interesting. Yeah, thank you for going through that. So
if I may then go to the second part of the equation, we then put these EVs into cities, and it's in cities where we have stop, starts, and turns. Highways we just drive and roll, but in cities, most tire pollution happens per mile per cities, not on highways. And because EVs are urban beasts, they congregate in this watering hole called the metropolitan areas. And so we have a high concentration here where already naturally tire pollution generates faster because it's an urban environment, because of the stop, starts, and turns. You then have people who are, let's just say, in their mid-20s and early 30s driving them, and it's a race car. And so when you put that pedal down, you're not aware of the fact that that's also having a huge influence on your tires. So you have an efficient vehicle that is heavy and high torque. We congregate them in cities, and we basically put people behind them that love to use the vehicle as it's designed to run really fast. And all of that leads to the fact that tires are incredibly important when you talk to EVs. And this is what we as Enso are addressing by building a better product that has higher durability, higher efficiency, and also more sustainable in the long run.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And your business specialisms, obviously you talk about urban vehicles in major conurbations. Do you work on mid to large vehicles as well, or is that market not developed yet?
So we currently do taxis and private hire vehicles, and also large format electric vans like the Ford e-Transit and the Mercedes e-Sprinters and all the classics that are some of the largest footprint vehicles, not just in terms of how many they're out there, but also in terms of how many miles these vehicles are driving on a yearly basis. So a taxi driver is driving like 30 to 40,000 miles a year, which is about 3 times more than the average car in the UK. A van is about the same. And that means that these vehicles that already have a propensity for wearing out tires faster are replacing tires 6 to every 9 months, which means that the engagement with the customer is very frequent because simply of the high mileages and the added wear and tear. So we focus on that because that's where the use case is literally shouting out for the best products. We will also be launching a range of passenger car and high performance tires early next year. And we have a number of developments with large EV fleets as well as OEMs to develop specialty tires to address key problems associated with these particular use cases. But ultimately, if you can look at Enso, we do the toughest tires for the urban environment. And ultimately, it's about making sure that the urban environment and the urban heroes that drive our vehicles, drive it as efficiently and with the least amount of impact.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'd imagine knowledge is one of these, but what are the current challenges in your marketplace?
I think the current challenges in the marketplace, I would say, is partially each market is very, very different. In whether you look at Europe or the United States, and our ambition is Western Europe and the United States in particular, where the EVs roam. So we focus on these geo-fenced pockets where there's a high concentration of electric cars, which is cities, not countries. So the challenge, I would say, is that each one of these pockets is a distinct market and has a distinct collection of vehicles and distinct trends in how they address tires. And I would say that when you look at continental Europe, it's a much more developed market. The UK is a bit less developed, to be honest, when it comes to tires. But I think ultimately, when we show people the TCO savings, the cost savings per mile for operating on our products versus everyone else, it's easy to convince the customer to switch because nobody wants to spend more at any level. And so because we are principally a cost-saving operational efficiency tool, that is why the fleets which are professional buyers gravitate to us. So we're a bit inundated, I would say, at this stage with demand, because we're still a small company, but we're doing these specific use cases. But ultimately, we see ourselves as enabling these fleets to basically become better at doing what they do well.
Thank you. That was very clever, because I asked you what are the challenges and you told me about the positives, which was great. So my next question is, what are the biggest opportunities for yourselves over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think when we 3 to 5 years, first of all, we want to build a brand position where you think about tires for electric cars, you think about Enso. We are also currently developing our own manufacturing. So currently we're a bit like Apple. We design our products, but we have brand new state-of-the-art factories that make them for us. But our goal is to build a carbon neutral tire factory to make carbon neutral tires for carbon neutral vehicles. So ultimately, the way that we're addressing that is by developing, and we've announced this already, a factory which we're looking to build in the United States. This is a critical market because if you think the UK might be underserved, go to America. It's amazing. So the quality of the products there doesn't even, pales in comparison to what, we get here in terms of the efficiency and durability and the technology that goes into the product. And that's just the nature of the US market being a bit isolated and a bit distinct. What we're looking to do is build a massive project. We've announced it earlier, late June, in partnership with our friends in the United States government and others to develop this. Our goal is to have this operational by 2027, which would then be able to craft at volume the specific tires for these specific use cases. Ultimately, we're not going to make every tire on the planet. I think that's absolutely impossible. I think nobody can. But when you look at the technology, the fact that we can deliver this state-of-the-art technology to the market today at an affordable price means that there's something going wrong in the traditional tire industry. And there's many reasons for that. I mean, it captures under the word legacy. But ultimately, the big players have a hard time pivoting to a model like ours, just like it was very hard for the traditional car makers to pivot to electric cars. So we see ourselves as a vertically integrated, standalone, full stack tire company that not just makes the product and provides it to the customer, but takes it back at the end of life ultimately and recycles it back into raw materials. Yeah. And that for us is how we look at the world of tires. This is based on the principles of the so-called circular economy, but it's just good business. We can harvest the raw materials back out of the product, back into a new product in different configurations in different ways. And by doing that, we enable effectively the reduction in carbon emissions and the demand on our planet for these products. Because if we don't change the industry now, we're going to move from 2 billion tires a year, which is already causing havoc, to more than 3 billion tires needed to propel ourselves in the future on the 1.5 billion cars that are running on this planet. And we just don't have enough natural resources on this planet to cope with that, And so for us, making a tire that lasts longer is just good business. We enable that with developing business models like Tyres as a service and working directly with our customers to tune our products. But ultimately, the traditional industry, to put it bluntly, is built on selling more tires. So whether you're Michelin or a brand you never heard of, your way to growth is to sell more tires this year than last year. So you don't necessarily want them to last too long, and you don't want to spend much more to make them either. So ultimately, our business model is what enables us to step aside from the traditional legacy thinking and say, look, just like we didn't have EVs before we changed how we even made them and sold them, we're not going to have a new tire for the EV market until we change how we make them and sell them. So that's really where the concept of Enso came from. And I'm really glad that we've been successful at it.
Well done. And, you're an innovative business, and you're probably looking out for the early adapters that will change early. And then, the general consensus, people follow the lead over time, don't we? In everything, in technology, in lifestyle, in green transition, which we'll come back to in a second. What are people in your sector, not talking about that perhaps they should be?
I think the one thing that the industry doesn't talk about is tire pollution. The tire wear that comes off the tire every time you stop, start, and turn. These microscopic, ultra-fine particles, PM2.5s, PM10s, and larger particles, which end up in the air we breathe, that end up on the road, they get washed on the drains and into our oceans. They don't biodegrade, they just aggregate, and some of them are toxic. So when we were recently nominated by Prince William for the Earthshot Prize, for example, in the clean air category, it was a recognition of our technology and how it looks to abate tire pollution in terms of air pollutions, because we were nominated in the clean air category. And put that in perspective, it's the first time ever a major celebrity, if we can call Prince William a celebrity, ever talked about tire pollution. I mean, this was a scientific boffin topic that was discussed in air pollution study groups. But we're breathing more tire dust than tailpipe dust here in the UK right now. If I leave this building in County Hall, where we're based, just opposite Big Ben, and walk across the bridge, I'm breathing more pollution from the tires on those vehicles than the tailpipes, even with all those dirty diesels still running around. And that's a fact. Sorry for that. That's some sort of an Apple thing. So ultimately, the way that the industry doesn't want to talk about tire pollution is systemic to the problem. How do you solve this problem if you don't want to talk about it? And at the same time, I just want to make clear, we're not going to make the tire last forever. That's impossible. Tires will always wear down. But there is technology out there to dramatically reduce that pollution and make the tire material inert, non-toxic, and ultimately biodegradable. But here's the funny thing about it is that the whole business model of the tire industry is to sell more tires. So if you're not going to talk about the problem, it means that you don't really want to address the problem. And I would say that is probably when I look back at the industry itself and to say, look, why don't you start to talk about it? And the regulational fear that sits behind the industry is that the industry knows that regulation will come and tackle this problem. But the industry is very good at saying it can't be solved because of safety or costs, or we'll have to put old factories out of business. All the reasons that the traditional industries in every industry would always say where change needs to happen. So the tire industry is not unique. It's just sitting there waiting for a regulator in a jurisdiction to step up to the plate and say, look, we don't want this anymore. We're not going to have clean air in our cities unless we start regulating tires. And the reason we don't have any Tiregate ever happening to date is there's no laws being broken. You can do as much as you want here.
Good. Well, my last question, which I ask everyone, will be a good opportunity for you to deal with that, and but also, and thank you for going through it, because we only know what we know. Sometimes we all go along in innocent blindness. We don't mean to, and you find stuff out, and it's quite interesting. And like I'm chatting it through there, I'm sure some of our listeners and watchers will find what you're talking about interesting and something that gets them thinking about it. And we don't. It's only when people start thinking about it and become aware of it that things may change. So yeah.
And I just want to make one thing perfectly. The critical thing that Enso is doing is taking existing technologies, stuff that exists, and just accelerating into the hand of the EV fleets that are consuming tires at the highest rate, and we do that at an affordable price. So the critical thing is about making sure that technology today hits the road today without having to charge a premium for it, and that is the secret. It's when we cut out all the middlemen, which are delaying the change to happen, and we enable the TCO of your vehicles and your logistics to reduce every mile. There's no reason to accept it, not to accept it, because you have this inherent benefit on the cost side, and you get all that environmental benefit on the tail end as well. And that's really where we're saying is that this is not a green premium, this is a green discount that we're offering to large EV fleets. And that's really where they come to us and say, look, what's the measurement? And I say, look, it depends. Depends how you operate your fleet, how you educate your drivers, what vehicles you drive. But at every level, we're better.
No, great. And the next question, which we've been sort of coming around to in lots of ways, you are part of the green transition, but how do you see, do you see your potential customers and consumers accepting the green transition or resisting it?
They don't need to accept anything about the green transition. They're just going to accept they're going to save money and get better operations on their vehicles. The green transition is driven by the improvements we deliver on the technology that delivers that. Okay. But the technology is about cost savings, TCO. So okay. You could be the meanest, non-greenest person on the planet, and you're just saving the greens in your pocket, not the greens in the environment. And that's enough for us, because the green transition is delivered through reducing the costs of green technologies. And that is really the secret that Enso has delivered. It's not about trying to tell you or sell you something based on your heartstrings. This is, I'm selling this based on your purse strings. And that really is the critical thing. When we are deploying Tyres with electric vans, electric taxis, electric, other vehicles at scale, the sheer cost savings that it's delivered through saving on your energy bill often pays for the tires. For, effectively, that energy saving, depending on the use case and where it's run and how much you pay for the electricity, that saving on your energy bill can be so enormous that the tires are free.
Well, that fits nicely, because you get the green transition, whichever one is trying to be greener and forced to, almost, I don't say for free, but as a byproduct, which is fantastic. Really, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate it. What developments, what developments in your sector have surprised you most, in your career so far?
I would say that the developments within our sector, I would say that the industry really understand that this needs to happen, and the amount of support we've had within the industry. And that's both within the tire industry and I would call the electric vehicle industry, both in terms of the OEMs and the fleets, in the sense that I always expected the fleets wanted to save the money. The OEMs are an interesting beast, because I would put them on a spectrum of really aggressive and barely moving at all. But I would say that the most surprising has been the embrace that we've had from people within the tire industry itself, who often sit at these big corporations and want to see this change happen, but they are powerless to make it happen. I mean, even if you're the CEO of Michelin, you can't really change the production of 240 million tires overnight. Pivoting 60 plus factories around a new concept and not kind of have your stock price crater the next day. So I think that the interesting thing is about I would say the awareness and what we've done, because we do this with integrity and transparency, and we want to bring people aboard the journey. So we kind of run this open innovation platform where basically people can come to us and talk to us at any time and say, look, this is what's happening. And ultimately, we're going to be moving on the planet for the next decades on tires, the next 10,000 years on tires. We're never going to get rid of tires. So we better get busy at making them better.
Thank you. Thank you. And one question I think you're going to enjoy, and I'm asking everyone this question: if you could speak to the Prime Minister, then what would you ask him to do to assist your business to grow and flourish?
Well, it would be nice to ban the worst tires out of the market, because they're much more polluting than the premium end, and they wear twice as fast, so they generate twice the pollution. So we should ban those overnight. And they don't save anyone any money, because you're just buying two sets instead of one. So that would be a nice, easy win. Is put a standard in place, and that will arrive very soon. The other thing with the Prime Minister is saying, look, we at the moment with electric vehicle journey is having a bit of a hiccup, because people are saying, look, it's not growing. It's always growing. EVs are growing like crazy. People have just got kind of wild ideas about how fast they should be growing, but we need them to grow faster. So anything that enables the electric vehicle journey to happen quicker is better, particularly for the vehicles that drive the most, because it's those vehicles that are generating the most pollution. So the faster we can move the high mileage vehicles, the vans, the taxis, all of those vehicles to an electrified future, the better. we don't have to worry about that car that sits on the parking lot and gets moved only on Sundays. Generates no carbon emissions almost whatsoever. We just have to focus on making sure that those high mobility solutions, the things that generate the most carbon emissions in the transport space, get addressed first. And that's, of course, logistics is a critical part of that.
Wonderful. Okay, no, thank you very much, Dee, for your time. I'm sure I found it very interesting. I'm sure our listeners and viewers will do the same. I really appreciate your time. Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a good one.